Well, welcome everybody. Podcast number 1. Where have the characters gone? And I've got two of the most obvious candidates with me right here. Kevin Reid, Reedy, Brett Jackman, Jacko. Welcome, boys.
Thank you, Rod.
That's
Good
right.
to be here.
You. Thanks for giving me your time.
No problems.
Yeah,
Thanks for
well,
spending
happy to.
15 minutes with Fitzy. So before we jump in, Reedy, we'll start with you, mate. So just for those who don't know you that well, but I would have heard of you for sure, when did you start in the insurance industry, mate? When did your career kick off?
Very romantic day. It was the 14th of February, 1973.
73.
Yep.
Really?
So I was finished Wesley College and became a very distinguished gardener in the Mount Pleasant Applecross area. And my company was called Reed's Edges and Hedges. And my motto was...
Really?
My motto was only the best will do. And my mother said, I didn't put you through Wesley College to be a gardener in February. And so I went and applied for a job at Lumley's. And Mum said, get your hair cut. So it was down my backside.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And so I didn't. And then when I got home, she said, how'd you go? And I said, good. She said, you didn't get your hair cut. You wouldn't get the job. Well, I did get the job because of the school tie. Could you believe that?
Yeah. Bretty, Jacko?
Yeah.
Mate, go back to when you started.
7th of January 1976, I walked into the old state government insurance office
SGIO.
as a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Yep.
And was that a choice for you, mate, or did that just happen to fall in?
No, I did it. I sat a public service exam, which SGIO was.
Yeah, it was.
State government was back in those days, and got offered a job. I was working with Dad in the butcher shop and making a decision whether I was going to be a butcher or an insurance person. It'd probably be the same, really.
It's amazing how they can cross over.
Yeah. But I walked, same as Reedy actually. Mum said you better go and get your hair cut because I had hair down the back, down my back, and I went down the Floret Forum and barber and came home and she goes, that's not good enough. She actually drove me down and maybe get a second haircut. Ironically, you walk into SGO.
At least your mum gave you the barber choice. My mum used the more.
The bowl.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the disappointing part is when I first walked into SGO that day, the first day, and I walked around and there was all people, the guys running around with, hair in ponytails, that really disappointed because I'd lost about 4 inches. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I started in the motor vehicle area, filling out cover notes, taking on new business. Yeah.
So, boys, obviously the journey's been incredibly exciting, but also you've seen a lot of change. So we'll get to the change towards the end of this conversation, but during your career, you would have come across some absolutely interesting characters of your own, interesting characters of yourselves, and we'll highlight that as we go through. But probably again with you, Reedy, mate, people you've worked with, how did that impact on you? What sort of stories have you got to share and how you were dragged along for the ride?
I know we've only got 15 minutes, but this could take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So what really interested me was after I did the boring accounting stuff was getting involved with the contract risk policies and the contracts we had with Lloyd's of London. Right. So I used to complete all those and deal with the underwriters in Lumley's, Security and General, National Employers Mutual. And
have you got a plaque on that one?
Yeah, I have. But I used to do the accounting, and Bill Ross was my then manager, and he'd come up to me and he'd go, Reedy, have a look at this. This bloke drinks more than he eats. And that was a bloke called John Parkinson, who used to go to lunch with brokers back in the 70s and late 70s, early 80s, down to the Sheraton and do his deals. And Parky said to me, Reedy, you should try this. So that was a guy that influenced me then. So Bill Ross said, so you want to become an underwriter? I went, yep. You know what he said to me? I'll give you some rope, you go and hang yourself. There was no training. No, it was just on-the-job training, and you had to learn how to underwrite from basics. There was no education process. And it was basically workers' compensation. I was learning all lines, so I used to do livestock insurance, surfboard insurance back then.
Really?
Yep. Twin insurance, horse insurance, which I really interested because I made London laugh when I called a mare a gelded mare. But yeah,
when you talk about the training, that was expected. You didn't get any.
No.
That wasn't so much an issue for you at the time. You look back now and you go, a little bit like I said before, how did I get through that?
Yeah.
But you didn't expect it, and you were just expected to learn on your feet and run quickly.
Yep.
Well, yeah. It was just the way it was ingrained in you and the way you went.
It was incredible because, as I said, Bill said, here's some rope, go hang yourself.
Yeah.
Basically, that was it.
Yeah.
So we had a portfolio of $1.5 million workers' compensation.
Yeah.
That was in 1983.
Right.
And I grew that to $4 million by 1986 when the company went bankrupt. And that wasn't because of me. I've been involved with quite a few companies on the way through.
No comment is nominated there.
FAI.
No, it wasn't FAI. No. But no, that was how I got into the underwriting area and sales area. Really appealed to me because it was full of characters.
Right.
And we'll talk about that next section in the next segment, if you like, the characters that I came across that made me what I was, and how I got involved with those people. Yeah. And moved on from there.
Well, let's get to that. Let's get to that in a second. We'll go to Jacko first. Jacko, obviously earlier in your career, gullible young fellow, I can imagine, probably a bit cheeky. Nothing's changed. So, mate, what type of people you came across? Who really got you sort of forward in your career? Who sort of got you to the next step?
Yeah, I was probably a little bit different than Reedy. I mean, I was a rat bag, no question. I was 16 years old. I wasn't even driving when I started. I used to catch the bus to work in. But I grew up at SGI, the State Government Insurance Office, and I was probably lucky in a way that there was people like, Gary Moore, Ray Power, Frank Michelle, that actually, you didn't have any formal training. Yes, it was on the job, but they actually did mentor you a bit and help you along the way. Yeah, a lot
more of that going on, yeah.
Yeah,
that's right.
And SGI, the State Government Insurance Office back then was a good local office that had everything, like HR, IT, accounts, and I moved around a lot, and I think I saw a wider picture, and I was lucky to have that back in the early part of my career, which afforded me, what I was able to do later on, becoming a senior manager. Yeah. But I guess a little bit differently. I didn't go out and purely underwrite as such, but I had a lot of people around me that influenced the way. Yeah. After I got through my couple of years of rat bag.
Yeah. I don't think you've got over it, mate. I think you're still in that period. Yeah.
SRG Group, award-winning insurance brokers based in Perth, offer competitive insurance premiums for all businesses. To find out why thousands of businesses use SRG for their insurance needs, go to srggroup.com.au.
Reedy, talking about characters, mate, let's share some of those stories before I share some about yourselves, because that's probably where we get into some real funny ones. But tell us some funny stories about your time, mate. Some of the things that maybe these younger generation today who are really taking the mantra on. What's some of the stories that you could share that maybe they could go, wow, I didn't even know that could have happened? Or
what I can remember after some long lunches, there were some fantastic deals done. But what was incredible was the relationship you formed with brokers and had that ability to talk to you like a human being and not like an underwriter. So I used to deal with Ross McGovern, who's passed away, unfortunately. Yeah. Yep. And Ross was running Host Pack, which is all insurances for the pubs, and we talked about the Foxy Lady being an institution that we used to go to. When I did their renewal rate one year, Ross rang me up. He said, "Reedy, I've got your rate. I don't want to buy the pub. I just want to insure it." So we'd have that ongoing relationship, and it'd be fantastic negotiation. And then there was Chris Fitzgibbon, who's also passed away.
Oh, okay.
Chris used to walk around to his brokers and say, "A deal a day keeps the dole check away." So he always had his brokers on their toes to do a deal. Yeah. So AI became a very big part of my portfolio with GIO back in the 90s.
Yes.
Yeah, so they were huge. And then there was Ted Hicks.
Yeah.
Now, Ted's 78. And,
bumped into Teddy not long ago.
Yeah, so he was ex-SGIO.
Yep, he was. Yep.
Where he first started, he was head of NEBA. Perth Insurance Club used to be around. We talk about institutions. Yeah. He's involved in the Insurance Golf Society.
That's right, I remember that.
So Ted was a stalwart of the industry, had a very good ability to negotiate. Didn't have a very good insurance knowledge. Used people around him, and I think that's a skill for young brokers. Is use the people around you to make yourself look good. And Ted did that. He wrote some big companies, and they followed him wherever he went. Yeah. So it wasn't because he was cheaper, or it was just TEDx.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people person.
Yeah. So they were some characters that I met in the early days. There was always the tough ones too that you'd have to be on your toes because you knew you were getting screwed if you can order that one out. But so you had to pick it, so you had to have the knowledge to understand it.
Yeah.
We were lucky that we came through a period in the 80s when we were negotiating and meeting brokers, and underwriters were meeting brokers in a social environment. So we had a lot of that.
Yeah.
It was really a friendship, a trusting. So you had that, didn't you?
Jacko, what about yourself, mate? Any sort of anything come to mind about the good old days? Any people or characters? We just spoke about a couple there.
Absolutely. I mean, it was like a big family, and to the point, I look at people like John Tickner, for example.
Yeah, Ticks.
And
he's no longer with us. So.
Yeah, and I remember working at the GIO with you guys and coming across an engineering risk that I had picked up, and I wasn't familiar with some of the covers I needed, and Tix worked for Lumley and I worked for GIO, and I picked up the phone with Tix, and he actually helped me out and guided me through what I should know and what I should ask to make sure that the client got it right for the client.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine that happening very often these days.
No, Derek Jackson was another one that I used to talk to, but then also the late Peter Elliott. You forget about Peter Elliott, for example, who when I was in corporate at GIO, really took me under his wing and gave me a lot of insight into that commercial side.
Yep.
And of course the famous, infamous Danny Collins.
My adversary.
Yeah.
If you're watching Danny.
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, back at the GIO days, it was just a lot of fun, but a lot of learning. I was probably a bit late bloomer into the commercial corporate world.
Yeah.
And of course Ian Williams, Willie, So a lot of fun days. I mean, we've already mentioned the Foxy Lady, but Ziggy's was another area just to sort of catch up.
That was another world, right in the middle of the city, and you go down a few steps, basically down one staircase, and you could be anywhere.
But it was all
some interesting characters in there, weren't there?
And all nicknames.
Yeah.
Like Tix, Jacko, Fitzy. It was just all nicknames.
Jugs were about $7 or $6, I think, from memory.
Oh, if
Jug
that.
VB or
Well, you'd actually get a few freebies from
Johnny McAvoy.
That's it.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore. But that was interesting because before it was Ziggy's, as I said before, it was the Lambert Bars All-Stars, and Peter Elliott, you mentioned.
Yeah.
He used to play cricket for Lambert Bars All-Stars, and I played for them. Peter used to love fielding at fine leg with his esky, and we used to call him, his nickname was Pickets.
Yeah.
Because there was only one run at a time because he never ran.
Yeah.
He said if I could run, it'd be at Flemington.
His drink was vodka.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Reddy, I want to talk about the infamous. I'm assuming you're behind this one, and I know you were driving it for a long time. The underwriters versus brokers footy games. Again, as a young bloke in the early to mid '90s, I mean, great idea. I couldn't imagine it doing it now.
No.
But mate, tell me how that all started and what was that all about?
It was basically, as Brett mentioned, it was just networking, sitting there and said we should do this, and so I became the captain of the underwriters, and then we had the captain of the brokers. Would organise a team, and we'd play once a year, and we'd go to East Perth Oval. Yep. We played 1 year at Rushton Park. We played Pinjarra another year. We played a combined side down there. So we were always involved in socialising. What would happen, sometimes we'd get rugby players to play.
Yeah, too. Owen Bray and Rod Fitzgerald.
Yeah, that's right.
And both got ping running with the ball because they didn't realise you had to bounce it.
and I still
kicking skills were a little bit, but geez, we ironed a couple out though.
You were good at tackling.
Yeah, I still remember one thing. We played in some because obviously football seasons in the winter, so we had to get the off season, and it was a dry oval, East Perth Oval, and I'm down in the forward pocket. And I see Fritz Nebel running around in the back pocket. Then this rugby player chasing him. Next minute, was just dust everywhere. And Fritz Nebel ended up into the fence.
I remember that. Yeah.
Rodney Fitzgerald, I think his name.
Might have broken something, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Well, and on that we had some great fun with those, and injuries because as we got older, the injuries came on, so we all got injured. But, with the cricket, we had underwriters versus brokers cricket matches.
Okay.
And Brian Lawrence, I know Brian was always injuring himself. I broke his leg one day when he was trying to catch a ball when I was trying to catch a ball and broke his leg.
I in my recollection on the footy, it was amazing the talent that you could recruit, not just first grade rugby league players in WA, which are one thing, but you had waffle players, you had quite a good talent pool, didn't we? And they wouldn't be allowed to play today, even if you could get the game up. But
you had Adam Clark,
Clarkie,
rocking to Drew Donnelly,
Andrew Donnelly, and people like that, and there's others I'm not giving credit to. But
Lance Marwood was a good state footballer, so he was good, So, but what was good about that, we'd have the match, and invariably you'd talk about work after. You'd say, Brett, what do you got coming up? And you talk about what's coming up, and it was really, and that's how you created that networking back then.
Well, boys, we could talk all day, quite frankly, and we knew this would happen, but we've run out of time. But it's been fantastic having you both together. I work with both of you and stayed in contact with you in the industry through one reason or another, and it's been fantastic. So let's go down and see if we can get a $6 jug somewhere, and we'll have a couple of beers, and we'll tell a few more stories. But thanks for your time, boys.
Thanks,
guys. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, buddy. Thank you.
Mate.
Thanks.